Hello and welcome to this session of Connected Ink 2022, where we'll discuss why handwritten signatures are just perfect for the digital identity of the future. My name is Ken Kasischke. I am heading the marketing team of Wacom's Business Solutions unit. And we'll be talking today about the future of biometric handwritten signature and why, although it might, seem like an anachronistic technology, much like, maybe a record or a fax machine, handwritten signatures actually have a very bright future ahead. So bear with me, I will explain. Right. Let's start with actually clarifying what a signature is. So, of course, we all have our everyday understanding that a signature is something that you put under a piece of paper to put your name and then to agree to whatever stands on the paper. And that is actually almost true, but, let's evolve a little bit by starting with that signatures were actually invented for business purposes hundreds of years ago. So it's somewhat funny to think about it that way, but signatures then were technology advancements. So basically they were invented because wax seals proved to be not really reliable, also not very easy to handle. They could be forged, they could be stolen. So a handwritten signature basically became this much more user-friendly, so to speak, authentication mechanism back in the day. And what it was used for is, of course, two people or more people than just two, basically, come to an understanding that they want to close a deal. They put it on paper, and then they write their names onto that piece of paper, and by that, binding their will to that piece of paper. And that's exactly what a signature does from a legal perspective. It connects the consent of a person to the contents of a document. So behind your signature on a piece of paper is, from a legal perspective, also you as a person. And the nice thing about a signature is, of course, that it's a biometric expression. It's a performative act that you create in the moment of the decision making. So that's also why we can definitely say that you consent to something if you sign something, because otherwise your signature wouldn't be there. It's not a mouse click. It's not an accidental fingerprint. It's not that you looked into the camera and by that your phone unlocked. It's something that you did intentionally. And that is also then reflected in the value of the signature, of course, when it comes to the law. So the signature, verifies the contents of the document. And of course, because the signature is inseparable from the paper once you ink on it, that's the reason why it's also legally valid. To summarize, very simply, the mighty signature does basically two things. It helps identify yourself, and it expresses consent. The signature works so perfectly in the physical world that we don't even think about it anymore. And this is true to a lot of technology that's great, right? So you don't think about it because it just works. You only start thinking about it if it doesn't work anymore. The same with the signature, right? So basically in an everyday situation, if you want to sign a contract, no idea, for consumer credit, mobile phone, you show up, you say, hey, it's me. I want to do a deal with you. You agree on the deal. You authenticate yourself using an ID. And based on these very simple procedure, you sign whatever. You sign more or less any contract based on this very easy-going workflow where there is nobody involved but you, your identity, and the other party, of course, whom you close a deal. Everyone has the right to recognition as a person before the law. That is something that's important to keep in mind when we go further in this presentation. Because being able to perform legal acts in the digital space, of course, becomes more and more important. So we characterized, the journey that we are on with this image, where we say, okay, on the left side, we have the physical space. On the right side, we have the digital space. And in the middle, we have this intersection between human and digital, which is where we from Wacom for Business and generally also Wacom tend to basically reside. We claim this as our space. And we just discussed the person in the physical space and his way of signing. Now there is a very simple way to move this signature into the digital space by, for example, using our technology, signature pads and I don't know, signature displays. You will have used them in your life already if you went to a public office. So electronic handwritten signatures are, of course, digital, but they are very strongly connected to the real world because in most cases, you still need a personal ID. Then you sign on the device and it connects you as a person to the digital world through the biometric handwritten signature. So it's entirely created by you, the electronic handwritten signature, but it's still digital. Now, of course, we don't only want to be able to sign mostly in in-person meetings. So we also want to be able to sign remotely. When we go digital in regards to signing, we risk losing our human agency. In the internet, as this cartoon from the New Yorker, I think it was created in 1993, claims, in the internet, nobody knows that you're a dog. Transferred to our example, it means that, of course, if you're an actor in the digital world, nobody knows who you are. Nobody knows whether it's now really me, Ken, logging into a system. So we need digital ways to authenticate our identity. But the way we do this right now is depending on something that's called a certificate. And all that basically means is that a third party is from now on vouching for you. So a digital signature is a machine act that is attributed to you. So it's not you signing when using a certificate-based signing, it's the machine basically signing on behalf of you. What that means in the end is that you only exist as long as this third party supports you. You don't have control over your identity. So if you stop paying this third party, or if this third party, for whatever reason, decides to not provide you with a certificate anymore, then you cannot perform any legal acts in the digital space. And therefore, we think that this certificate-based signing is, of course, something that works very well for a large group of people, but it has this fundamental flaw that instead of providing you as a person with the full agency, they vouch for you. Thinking about this certificate-based signing, how can we fix that? And of course, the general answer is that people need to have full human agency in a digital space, right? So this is a pretty simple concept. You are in the physical space a person, you should be also a person in the digital space and have full autonomy as a person. And the solution, and that is something that is a trend since quite a while now, is something called decentralization and a technology standard that's called self-sovereign identity, short SSI. This is based on technology like blockchain, decentralized ledgers, wallets, cryptography. So these are the kind of the technologies that are involved here. But in order to understand how this future will work, I would like to try to give you, a very simple introduction into SSI, into the self-sovereign identity. So what SSI is an identifier in the digital space that you solely control, and this identifier can be trusted by all. It's analogous to the situation we now face in the physical world. So here we see in the right image here, somebody says, "Hey, it's me." They pull out a wallet. Inside the wallet is an ID card. They hand it over to a person that they want to provide their identity with. This person looks at the ID card. Of course, looks at maybe the image, the birth date, and confirm that it's them. That's how it works in the physical space. And exactly like this, just supported by digital technology, is what SSI provides. So you go into the digital space, you have a digital wallet. Inside this digital wallet, you have digital credentials that belong to you and with which you now, based on these decentralized ledgers, can authenticate yourself against other parties. So our idea is to combine the power of the handwritten signature with the before mentioned SSI technology and standards. And you see here very much the same image like with the SSI, where the physical person identifies themselves with the same means as they identify themselves now in the digital world. We sign the same way using a biometric signature. And that is not an accident, because why is the biometric signature so important for secure signing? Let's look at a quick reminder what signing is all about. The signature does two things. It identifies yourself and it expresses consent. If we now look at how secure signing works, you have to imagine that you pull out a mobile phone, you open a document, you sign on the document, and doing that is the digital version of a landlord, basically in the medieval ages, signing a contract when he wanted to buy 3 sheep, for example. It's the same thing. You sign a contract, you express your will. At the same time, the same electronic handwritten signature is used to identify you. Of course, not only the biometric signature is used to identify you, it's used in a basically multi-factor authentication stack using the Swiss cheese layer model. So comparing it again with the physical world where you hand somebody your ID card when signing a contract, he will look at the ID card, will see, okay, this looks legit, that looks like a real ID card. They look at the image, they look at you, they see, well, this person looks exactly like the image on the ID card. They look at their signature and compare the signature and say, well, seems legit, okay. The secure signing concept does exactly the same. So they use, the first layer might be the own device where the wallet, which is then used to identify yourself, is installed. So the device is the correct one. It's your personal device. The wallet was unlocked using facial recognition. And then the third layer is the biometric signature, but not only the signature capturing, the signature is actually then verified against a template of stored signatures to make sure that this signature was created by the same person that also created the signatures in the template. So we have this, multi-factor authentication approach where each single factor has its strengths, it has its disadvantages, but together they form this 3-cheese layer where each layer has holes, but if you put them on top of each other, no holes visible, so this is basically impenetrable. So again, the signature is used for two things, and that's the beauty. You declare your will as a person, which is required by law, and you use the same biometric signature to identify yourself as the person. The declaration of will and the identification is therefore strongly linked to each other. So it is, from an authentication and identification perspective, a perfect conceptual construction. So what this allows us for full human agency, because as we learned with the SSI technology, you are in charge of your credentials. Of course, they are leveraging a decentralized network for authentication, but the beauty of it, that is of course decentralized and you own the credentials. So you have full human agency and you have full sovereignty in the digital space using this system. So, and what we'll do now is we'll have a look now at the actual technology, at the actual secure signing model. And after that, we will have two more experts. We will have Nacho Alamilio Domingo, a lawyer, a very renowned lawyer in the space of authentication and electronic signatures, talking about this concept from a legal perspective. And we will also check out with Nico Calanzis, who is a forensic document examiner, whether the system holds up not only in the legal space, but also in the forensic scientific space. So, and with that, please now welcome Lars Lenz, who will show you a quick demonstration of the secure signing concept.
Hi, everybody. Now, after listening to Ken's introduction, you should have a good impression of what we want to achieve with the secure signing project. And in the following 5 to 10 minutes, we would like to show you the secure signing demo application, which can, with its current version, issue decentralized remote signatures that are based on self-sovereign identities using cryptographic trust and decentralized ledger technology. Now, when we open the application, the first thing you can see here are your recently created signatures. Each row represents a cryptographically secured proof of a signature event. We call them signature credentials for short, because with them you can identify yourself as being the signer of the related document through either biometric or cryptographic verification. Much like an ID can be used to identify you as a person. Before we take a closer look at them, Let's sign a new document and create a new signature credential. And the way we do this is similar to other solutions. You have to pick a document, you have to pick a place where you want to put your signature, and you can add some metadata. In this demo, we choose the document we choose as an example for a travel expense form because we are currently researching intercompany use cases, but the workflow is really quite generic and can be applied to many other use cases. So the data you can add is also customizable, and I'll just add some metadata. My role or my title, developer. The reason for signing is approval. And the document being signed is a travel expense form, but we can just call it travel for now. And now after I press OK, the first thing that happens is that we are requested to apply our biometric signature. This is basically the starting point for the true magic of secure signing in SSI starts. So after I apply my signature and press OK, this biometric signature is verified against my biometric signature template using Wacom's G Suite technology, and the template is stored and maintained just on this device, which I'm currently using for the demo. And this provides us not only with the GDPR compliant storage of biometric data, but also with the proof of person authenticating me as the person signing this document. So now I press OK, and what you can see popping out in the bottom are decentralized identifiers we are creating for the document. And this is our entry into the SSI world, because these identifiers point to a decentralized network. And we can resolve them, or anyone who has the method to resolve this identifier can resolve it, communicate with the blockchain, and retrieve the data we stored in the blockchain. The network we are currently using is the ION network, which is a second layer technology developed and maintained by Microsoft, and it is running on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. And by giving the document an ID in this public network, we can create an immutable link between the user, his signature, and the document. And this link is publicly accessible, verifiable, as well as privacy preserving and in total control of the user. And we can see a new signature credential was created, and the best way to show what this means, what I explained just now, is to have a closer look not only at the signature credential that was generated for me as the user, but also at the data that can be retrieved based on the identifier we created for the document. And this identifier is embedded in a PDF. So when I press this verify document button, I can just pick a PDF I signed. And when I click on verify, we are retrieving this decentralized identifier from the PDF. We resolve it, so we communicate with the network that represents the decentralized network or the blockchain. We retrieve the data which is stored there, and we store the service in this data. So I'm requesting the service to get the data we captured during the signature event. This data is secured by a private key encryption from an authority we trust. And you can see it here on the top. It's the issuer did. And we also can resolve it and request through the service that the issuer can authenticate himself through any means, and cryptographic means or any other. What you can also see is some generic PDF or signature data, like the author creation date, modification date, and below the header signature event, you can see the data we collected during the signature event. You can see that the verification was successful, that the biometric data is attached or was captured. You can see also this signatory did, which is my ID as the user, as well as the document did, which is the ID of the document. You can also see the additional information, but this is just an example. We can put a lot in there, and it's also up to the integrator. Okay, now going back to the starting page, we can have a quick look at a signature credential. When I click here on this, with what I created, I can also see that I have the date of the document in there. It is the issuer is myself, so this is my proof of signing the document. And through the date of the document, we can also retrieve, for example, updated documents and keep track of its evolution. Okay, that's what was basically it from this application. Before I end this demo, I would like to show you how this identifier can be looked up, and also the data we store in the blockchain, which is related to the identifier, is displayed. So we just go to an endpoint provided by the network, which is this ION Explorer. I can type in the identifier of the document, for example, and when I press on search, it is, or the data is collected, which is related to this ID, and we can see here that there's a service attached to the ID, and I can request this service to provide me with all the data we captured during the signature event. In the final version, this request would need to be approved of the user who's in control of this data, so that it's not a it's in order to provide the owner of it with the most control you can have. So that's basically it from my side, and thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us, Avner or myself, and we are more than delighted to answer any questions. And now I'm giving back to Ken. Thank you.
Lawrence, thanks a lot for this great demonstration. So with me now is Dr. Ignacio Alamillo Domingo, a lawyer that we work with quite a bit in the electronic signature space. Nacho, do you quickly want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon. First of all, thanks for inviting me to this occasion. It is an honor. I am a lawyer, as you've said, and I've been working the last 25 years of my life in electronic identification systems, digital signatures to services, and the like. The last 3 years, I've been more involved in self-sovereign identity and being part of the European Commission's team.
I now shared in the last couple of minutes the secure signing concept and why electronic handwritten signatures are a vital part from it, from our perspective. What's your initial reaction to that?
Well, in fact, I fully support whatever you said before, because if you look at how electronic signature has worked during last centuries and how they work all around the world, irrespectively whether we have different legislations, you will see that a good electronic signature solution should support human agency in the electronic realm. And otherwise, it is not a good electronic signature solution. And for this, we need to consider 4 properties. And this is for any kind of technological approach. An electronic signature should provide a unique and real binding with a human being. And that means that only Nacho should be bound to Nacho's signatures. Otherwise, we are creating a potential risk of having different people signing on my behalf. Secondly, an electronic signature should enable direct human agency in electronic space, because otherwise we are creating a place where there will be people with no legal agency, without the right to act directly, and this would potentially create discriminations. And therefore, we need to understand that the electronic signature supports the self-sovereign identity approach as well. And third, an electronic signature solution should promote privacy and minimal disclosure. This is something that not always happens, because in many cases we need to disclose more information than strictly required to prove, for instance, who we are or what is our will. And finally, a good electronic signature solution should expand personal autonomy. Otherwise, we will be creating a world where people will not necessarily be able to act. And this would be clearly against human rights construction.
Very interesting. So thanks for the overview. Maybe we can quickly go back to the specifically the slide, why is biometric signature so important for secure signing? So with this construction of the signature basically expressing the will and at the same time helping to verify the identity, can you talk about this from a legal perspective a little bit?
Yeah, of course. If you look at how signatures work in real world, and they have worked in the last centuries, they have been associated to two particular functions. One, the main function, of course, is to declare will, to perform a legal act where you assume that you are in agreement with a written text, like a contract, for instance. And this is nice because it happens even if you do not clearly or fully understand the text. So in many cases, we go upon notaries and they explain to us the content, and then we say, okay, we agree to that and we sign. But this is not sufficient in the electronic world. In the electronic world, specifically in the new digital spaces that are arising right now, we need something additional. We need the second function. And the second function is precisely to prove who we are. In the electronic ink signature, this is something that happens after. In the case of a conflict, you're able to verify if I was the legitimate signatory by having a forensic examiner. But in the digital space, we need to link both functions at the same time, meaning that as you are putting in your diagram, you should reuse the electronic signature that you are generating for declaring your will as a factor for authentication yourself, for authenticating yourself. In this sense, if Nacho is producing a handwritten signature to say that Nacho is in agreement with the content of a contract, we can reuse this biometric signature as a factor to prove that Nacho is actually Nacho. When you combine this with other authentication factors, for instance, like a facial identification in a device under your subject control, then you have best of both worlds. You have the declaration of will, but you have the identity of the signatory even before the signature is executed, before the contract is executed. This will increase the warranties for everyone, but especially for Nacho, that he will be able to self-assert his identity, or even better, in a future world, we could be deriving from our national ID cards or other legal documents our identity credentials to bind these credentials with our declarations of will. Therefore, we are creating a better world for signatories and for relying parties.
So what you're saying is really interesting. So you're saying that basically we use the same signature to put onto the contract to declare the will, as we are doing to verify the identity of the person. And using then SSI technology, we could even, of course, then link very official identification using, I don't know, the government, to link it then to the same document. So the signature in the document would be linked to the identity provided by the wallet, and then indirectly also then to a government issued identity, and therefore creating this really strong link.
Yeah, that's precisely the point. So if you look at the diagram, you see that we are using the handwritten signature, which is a fact that occurred in the physical world, but in the digital world as well, for these two purposes. First purpose is Nacho is declaring his will. Second purpose, Nacho is proving that Nacho is Nacho. When this is bound with other authentication factors in a strong authentication mechanism, then you pack both functions into one. You get a very strong document fulfilling and with full evidential value of both things. And this is something interesting because you will reduce fraud. You will reduce the number of times you need to go into court to discuss, and you will be getting something which is even better than qualified signatures.
Now, you also mentioned other digital worlds. So what did you mean by that?
Yeah, for instance, if you look at how metaverses are appearing right now, these are new types of digital spaces that are super big communities. So they go beyond Web 2.0, which was the space, for instance, for Facebook, companies, and the like. And they create spaces where we have new digital societies. So my expectation as a user is to be able to project my personality into a metaverse. What is the problem with the current business model, for instance, around metaverses? That it is starting to follow the classical business model for communities. In that business model, there is an owner of this digital space that decides through a contract everything we can do. And this is a potential issue because we should be able to exist into that particular digital spaces, like they are like new universes that we should be able to exist without having that much dependency on a third party. In this sense, if you want to move yourself into a metaverse, your expectation is to have legal rights. Your expectation is not to be erased or expelled from digital space just because you are behaving in a different way as provided for in the contract, which generates constitutional issues. And you will have the legal right to act. And for this, you need to be able to prove your identity without depending on a third party. You need to prove your declaration of will without depending on any party. Therefore, in metaverses, we should be moving into decentralized approaches, fully decentralized approaches that would support human rights. In this sense, this kind of technological approach is perhaps the only one that could work.
Yeah. So specifically because in metaverses, I could be anybody, but in the end, there needs to still be an identity layer that is trustworthy. So this is gonna be a challenge then. Yeah, I see. I have maybe closing question. We also invited Nico Calancis, a forensic document examiner that because we were on an event just recently together, also to this session. From your perspective, if you look at the legal space and the forensic space, how do you see the relationship of those two, and how do they contribute to each other?
Well, of course, there is a direct contribution from forensic science to this, which is precisely the fact that at the end of the day, we are basing this on a physical action performed by a human being. So the fact that at the end of the day, in the case of a conflict, I can have a forensic examiner verifying that really was Nacho the one activating this system, the one producing the signature, is very nice. For instance, I could create a completely different persona of Nacho to project Nachos into the metaverse. But in case of a strong conflict, if I had to go into court in the physical world, I could still use a forensic examiner to prove that Nacho was the signatory, because this is a kind of cyber-physical system. It is Nacho's signature as a biological construct after all. This means that Nacho could even have different personalities with different pseudonyms or names, but at the end of the day, the proof would be always attributed to Nacho as a physical being. In this sense, this is a perfect solution compared to any other solution based on machine validated identity, namely qualified certificates.
Thanks a lot. I think that was a perfect segue to Nico, who's already waiting on the line. So Nacho, thanks a lot again for your contribution and for this interview. And have a nice afternoon, and see you soon.
Many thanks.
Thanks a lot. With me now is Nico Calancis, a forensic document handwriting examiner from Greece. Hey, Nico. Can you please introduce yourself real quick?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nico Calantis. I'm a handwriting expert. I work at Hartoularios Institute in Piraeus, Greece, and I'm also a researcher at Staffordshire University in the United Kingdom.
So what does a handwriting examiner do?
Well, essentially, I examine handwriting signatures and documents to determine authenticity.
And this is true for both paper and electronic signatures?
Well, since we transitioned to this new era with this new technology, the electronic handwritten signature also falls under the scope of forensic handwriting examination. So yes, we do examine those as well.
So we just heard Nacho talking about, the legal perspective, when it comes to the secure signing concept and the role that electronic handwritten signatures play. But he also said that, of course, science is always, very important to connect it to the real world. So what's your take on electronic handwritten signature when it comes to, security? How would you compare it, for example, to the original pen and paper signature? And how do you see its role in the secure signing concept?
Well, first of all, the electronic handwritten signature has to play the same role from a legal perspective as the traditional pen and paper signature. This means that on a forensic level, it has to be able to withhold, to be subject to authentication procedures and to have a forensic framework of examination and analysis that will guarantee authenticity. So the first thing we need to check is whether the electronic handwritten signature provides the same amount of information, the same amount of individualistic characteristics for the forensic expert to examine and determine authenticity. And as it concerns my field, the forensic handwriting examination field, I can tell you that yes, this has been dealt with, this has been examined. There's a series of experiments and scientific publications, and we now even have a published and scientifically accepted methodology for the determination of authenticity of electronic handwritten signatures, at least within Europe, through the European Network of Forensic Handwriting Experts and the Best Practice Manual, where the process of determining authenticity of electronic handwritten signatures is stipulated. Furthermore, when we look into the various characteristics of the electronic handwritten signature data and the various visualizations of those data, we can see that the electronic handwritten signature as a medium provides more information to the expert. That may be quantifiable information versus previously available qualitative information. It may come in the form of inner trajectories, meaning the movement of the pen when in air, that can provide additional insight to the process of signing, which means at the end of the day, the electronic handwritten signature is actually even more secure than the traditional pen and paper signature.
So I think I just heard three different points. Number one is the equivalence of pen and paper and electronic signature. So is it actually true that we sign the same?
Yes, that is actually true. We have carried out experiments around the world, and we have confirmed that the signing behavior of a writer on paper is the same as you will find on digitizers, provided that specific criteria are met.
Okay, and then can you also analyze then the electronic handwritten signature the same as a pen and paper signature?
So when we have a handwritten product, meaning the traditional pen and paper signature, what we are looking at is the trace or the ink trace from the writing instrument on the document. That's what all the forensic experts will look at and analyze. When we are transitioning to the electronic handwritten signature, that motion is captured and reflected in numerical data. Using that numerical data, we are in a position to reconstruct different aspects of the handwriting motion and even to combine that data and visualize the handwritten product. But that's not the only thing we can do. We can take advantage of the numerical nature of the data. And as I mentioned earlier, visualize the inner trajectories on the ink trace, something that we cannot have in the pen and paper signature, or even move one step further in the understanding of the dynamics and visualize the data in a quantitative manner, especially when it comes to force and pressure, which inevitably leads us to various different forms of appreciation and understanding of the handwritten movement and the dynamics that lie within it.
Okay, so this looks then as from an analytical perspective, an electronic handwritten signature is way superior to a pen and paper signature. So that you have an abundance of data available that you don't have when looking at a pen and paper signature.
That is correct. We do have additional information that we never had access to, like the inner trajectories, and we also have better quality of information for the dynamics.
Okay, so we understand now that an electronic handwritten signature is, at least equivalent to a pen and paper signature, if not more convenient to actually analyze. But that still leaves the question: why should we use an electronic handwritten signature at all? Because there are other electronic signature types that may be more convenient to use. So, what's your answer to that?
To be fair, the electronic handwritten signature is the only electronic signature that cannot be decoupled from the owner. Every other form of electronic authentication can be utilized by another person with the appropriate access. The handwritten signature is tied to the writer, and each time you execute a signature, the handwritten product is unique. You can never sign the same way twice. So there's a dual type of uniqueness in the handwritten product, and that cannot be matched or surpassed by any other form of electronic signing.
So I think that's an interesting question. Let me quickly pull up the slides that I shared before. So what you're saying is that the electronic handwritten signature is unique every time. So basically, when signing a contract, I will always provide a unique signature, and therefore also this will help to to guarantee that the security of this process, because given that I ever see a signature that's the same, I can be sure that it's a copy, correct?
That is correct. If a forensic handwriting examiner looks at two signatures on photocopies, for example, and they are completely identical, then they can be certain that at least one of them is a forgery. And if nothing else, the two reproductions of the signature have the same source. But going to your slide, what I would say is that when adding a biometric signature, handwritten signature to this bundle of your SSI solution, you guarantee two things. First of all, you guarantee that the person is necessary to be there and execute the signature for the transaction, for the process. And secondly, you tie a specific unique handwritten product to the specific transaction. The device you're using, the certificates you're using, even your face, they're going to be equal and identical in every process of signing. The only part of the puzzle that is going to be unique and therefore uniquely tied to the resulting digital document, that's going to be your biometric handwritten signature.
So what it sounds to me is that you say that the electronic handwritten signature is kind of a unique blend of perfect attributes for that. So because it's created in the physical space by a person in the moment, but also it's represented immediately in the digital world. Can you comment on that?
Yes, because the electronic handwritten signature is constructed in the physical world, but reflected in the digital world. Therefore, it incorporates the uniqueness of physical action with the security of the digital infrastructure. So it's a perfect crossover of the two worlds.
Thanks, Nico. I think that's a great finishing statement. Nico, thanks
Thank
a lot
you
for
very
your
much.
contribution, and yeah, talk to you soon.
So, what's left to say? Well, of course, we believe that all technology should serve people and be human. That's a pretty commonplace. But in the case of signing in the digital space, we believe that this goes way beyond the usual talk about usability and user experience. In this case, it's about the fundamental necessity that people have personal and human rights in the digital space, and that they need to be able to perform legal acts without being dependent on a centralized third party. And this is why we believe that handwritten electronic signatures will continue to play a vital role in our self-sovereign future. Thanks a lot for your attention. And if you want to discuss more about electronic handwritten signatures or about the secure signing concept, please reach out to me or to Lars. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of Connected Ink.